Hello, friends. This is Brian Amick, and welcome to episode 13 of Project 39. Today's guest is Nate Murphy of Zamar Instruments. Nate builds guitars by hand from his shop on Deputy Pike. In this episode, he tells us how he got interested in making guitars. He walks us through some of the steps involved in the process, and he shares how he'd like to see his business grow over time. We also had a third guest for part of this episode. We were recording from Nate's shop, and there was a guinea sitting outside who decided to let himself be heard. But after about 10 minutes, he decided to go elsewhere and things quiet down a little bit, so just bear with us. As always, I'd like to hear your feedback on this episode. Links will be at the bottom on how you can contact me, and I encourage you to share this episode with a friend. Everybody knows someone who plays guitar, so consider sharing it with them. They might enjoy it. So, all that being said, let's get with it. Nate Murphy, welcome to Project 39. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you taking time to sit down with me. So before we get into what you're doing, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm Nate Murphy. I'm 25 years old. I grew up, was born in Indianapolis, and then wound up moving down to Madison with my family when I was about 9 years old. I was homeschooled all the way through high school, which I loved. I thought it was really one of the greatest things in the world. I'm one of 9 kids. So
9, wow.
Yeah. So
where do you fall on the line?
I'm the 4th kid, but the oldest boy. So I have 3 older sisters right above me.
Okay.
And then it's kind of boy girl, back and forth a little bit more after that. But so growing up, home was always fun and loud, right? In a good way. So that's sort of my background. Right now, I own the business Zamar Instruments, which is what we're going to mostly talk about here today. Mm-hmm. But along the way, I do a lot of different things. I love playing music. I have an eBay store where I do stuff. I'm one of the guys who teaches at my church, and so I just do a lot of different things and love them all.
Cool, that's awesome. So your brand, Zamar.
Yep.
Zamar, am I saying it correctly?
Yep. Zamar Instruments.
So what's the significance of Zamar? How did you come up with that? Because that's not a word that I've really ever heard before.
Sure. Yeah. So Zamar is, it's a Hebrew word, actually, in its origin.
Okay.
And when I was just getting into building the instruments, I kind of needed to come up with a brand name. And I just did not like the sound of Murphy guitars. Sounds
a little generic.
Yeah, and it was like, it's a little generic, it's a little Irish, whatever. And so I wanted something just a little better, mm-hmm. and was trying to just figure out, where did I want to go with it? And my mom actually had the idea. She said, why don't you look up, Hebrew words and see if there's something that's there for you? And initially I was like, no, I'm not going to like anything from there. But I started looking around, and Zamar is one of the Hebrew words for praise. And in Hebrew, every word has its direct translation in English, mm-hmm. but also sort of an implied meaning. And so in Hebrew, Zamar translates as praise, but it carries the idea of praise on a stringed instrument. So it's in the Psalms a lot, like whenever it's referencing, praise the Lord on an instrument. It's usually the word Zamar.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's I can see why you chose that.
Yeah, I love it, and it gives. It's a nice opportunity. I like the sound of it. I like how it looks on a brand and a logo and all of that. But it also, as I'm talking to people and just engaging with the company,
right?
It gives an opportunity just to give them more backstory if they want.
Yeah, that's neat. So I guess technically you're what they call a luthier, is that right?
Yeah.
So tell us what a luthier is.
So officially a luthier is a builder of stringed instruments.
Okay.
And in America, we're a little looser with the term. In Europe, I think it's a little more specific to violin makers and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
little elitism there.
I think there's a little bit. I don't fault them. Violin making is its own animal. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a luthier. How did you choose that as a career path?
So pretty roundabout in its own right, I guess. Coming out of high school, I was trying to figure out just sort of what I wanted to do for next steps, and didn't really feel like college was the path I wanted to go down, but wasn't really sure what necessarily the alternatives were. And so I was looking at, I've always loved working with my hands, doing things hands-on. And so I was considering either like construction or furniture or something like that. And I wound up finding a furniture school, a woodworking school just south of Indianapolis. It's kind of this hidden gem in Indiana. It looks like a big pole barn in the middle of a cornfield, but you get in there and realize it's this incredible facility that's got 5 or 6 classes going at any one time, and all different kinds of mediums and
so it's a legit school.
Yes.
It's not just
it's set up. It's not like it doesn't run on a normal school year.
Okay.
And so what they do is their method is they teach in like week 10-day increments.
Okay.
And so their teaching faculty is all over the world. And so they will bring in instructors from Canada, from California, from wherever.
Really?
And so it lets it be, it's much more concentrated form of education.
Yeah.
Where basically you're there for a week with a professional. Let's say you want to learn wood bending and you want to bend wood. He's going to really be unpacking 30 or 40 years of experience in a week. And so, so it's a very intensive school, but it's a cool approach to education, I think, at least for a hands-on context. So long story short, I wound up interning there for a summer after I came out of high school. And one of the classes that I took, I was kind of going through the furniture program. And so I was doing, chair making and wood turning and carving and all of that. But then as an elective class, I took guitar building.
Yeah.
And I had thought, I play music, I play guitar. It'll be fun to build this guitar for my elective class and then go back to building furniture, whatever.
Right.
And it was a 6-day class. We built a whole guitar from like the ground up. And I just completely fell in love with building guitars.
Really?
And there was something just different. It's different than building furniture. It's it's just a different level of connection. I love just what it was doing. And, I walked out of that class with an object that actually made music.
Right.
And I just thought, if there's any way I could do this full time, I would just love that to death.
Yeah. And here you are.
Yeah.
So what's the name of the school?
It's the Mark Adams School of Woodworking. It's Mark with a C.
Really?
But it's this.
I've never heard of it. It's in southern Indiana?
Nope. It's just south of Indianapolis.
South of Indianapolis.
It's in the Franklin Whiteland area.
Really?
Yep.
I wasn't aware of such a place. That's pretty neat to know there's something nearby like that.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Okay. So how long did you actually study there?
So because it's set up, in week classes instead of an overall semester, I wound up interning there pretty much for a whole summer. So 10 weeks.
Okay.
And then a couple of years before that and after that, I would do, a week class here and there.
Okay.
Just to sort of, fill in some gaps and things I was trying to learn.
Yeah. That's pretty neat. It's neat that there's something nearby like that. So didn't have to travel across the country to get it. So.
Yeah, it was great.
So what goes into making a guitar? What are without getting down to the, deep level of detail, but what are some of the major steps, or, how do you I had no idea. How do you even go about it?
Sure. So truthfully, because I get asked that a good bit, and people want to know, what's the secret or what's the hardest part? And truthfully, building a guitar there's sort of building a guitar and then there's building guitars, plural. And if you're building them in a succession, then really probably one of the most important steps is just your ability to build jigs and fixtures. And a lot of guitar building involves routers and bandsaws. And so it's not like heavy equipment, but it's a process of, can you hold your pieces in the right position and, keeping your hands far enough away that you still have 10 fingers at the end of the day. Can you, clamp something down, slide it along a router table or a router fence and get the same result every time. And so a lot of it truthfully is building good jigs.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I've watched some of your, seen some of your videos that you post on Instagram, and there's some of the fixtures and tools you're using that are obviously you bought them.
Yep.
But there's some that, some of the jigs you're using that look pretty custom made. So you generally have to make your own?
A lot of times I do. A lot of times it's modifying for what you want, what you need. And there are certain jigs you can buy. Truthfully though, a lot of times they're expensive. And so if you're self-employed, a lot of times it's it's time versus money.
Dig through the scrap box. And
yep. You can find your leftover plywood, and you can make it work.
Make your own. It's pretty neat. I encourage everybody to go to his Instagram channel and check out some of the videos. It's pretty impressive the way that the whole process goes. So when you're building a guitar, what's the critical step? What's the step like if I screw this up, this thing's going in the wood stove. We're gonna have to burn it for heat.
So there's a couple of them. Probably overall, the most important part of the guitar is where the neck of the guitar joins into the body of the guitar. Because if that doesn't fit well, and if that isn't built right, then the guitar is not going to have the longevity that it needs. Because over time, there's so much tension from the strings that it'll actually kind of cave that area in.
Right.
And so just getting that right, getting that fit right, is super critical. I'd say the other step, sort of on the other side, is just the finishing process itself.
Okay.
Because it's just kind of one of the funny parts of the business. The finish, in a sense, is the least critical part to how's the guitar going to last.
Okay.
But it's the most critical in terms of, does it catch somebody's eye? The finish really, in a lot of ways, makes the sale.
It's attractive.
And
right?
so it's this, a finish is probably about 20% of the entire building process in terms of time.
That much?
Yeah.
You don't just slap a coat of varnish on at the end?
It's not. You're not slapping anything on. So finishing is probably the hardest step. And then just because you gotta lay down your coats right, you gotta do your prep sanding right, and then once you get the finish on, you've got to buff it. And so it's and I do a really hard finish to give it durability. So you got to buff it for a long time to get that up to the gloss that you want. But just a lot of, you're working with 1,200, 2,000 grit sandpaper, and then you're going to 3 or 4, 2 or 3 different wheels on the buffing wheel. And
you actually use a buffing wheel on them? Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the wood bending, studying that. Without giving away your trade secrets, how do you bend, I guess what we'd call the body of a guitar?
Yeah, sure. So
I've seen videos and stuff where they use like steaming things.
So really it's heat and water, and really the water just conducts heat really well. So you wet the wood, and then you put it, I have like a kind of a press mold that's cut to the profile of the guitar. And so I'll moisten the wood, wrap it in foil, stick it between 2 pieces of metal with a heating blanket.
Okay.
Turn it on, let it sit till it's, at the right temperature, and then just work carefully, work slowly, and you can press everything and form everything, and then you just hold it in place, kind of cook it a little longer, and then let it set till it cools. Okay. And it'll hold that shape.
So the body typically, is that one piece?
So basically each side of the guitar is one piece.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the guitar from the front on, the left side and right side are 2 separate pieces.
Okay. Oh, it's not top and bottom, it's left and right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that. How do you, we get into too many details.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So do you make custom guitars per order, or someone calls you up and they want something special, or do you just make stuff that you can ship off the shelf?
I do a little bit of both.
Okay.
So what I try to do is I like to have a couple models that I make to my specifications, and I can take them to shows, take them to conferences or events or whatever, and show people, I build basically these 2 models. Here's your price points. Here's what you're looking at. Here's what you'll get. Okay. And that offers a level of consistency, and I think just sort of comfort, almost assurance to a buyer. Like, there's some some backing to this.
He's actually made one.
Yes,
before.
right.
Yeah.
But I also do offer custom options, because when you're a small business, particularly a small guitar company, if somebody's buying a guitar from you instead of one of the major manufacturers or whatever, usually they want a story. They want a connection.
Right.
And for some people, hey, it was built by a small business is enough. Some people, though, want kind of their story as part of it.
Right.
And so that probably winds up being about, 1 out of every 8 to 10 instruments is usually one of those.
That many.
Yeah. And so at that point, I'll give people more options as far as what kind of wood do we want to use, and do you want to do some sort of custom inlay, things like that. So actually, I did one for a guy here in town, and he had some property, and so we went into his woods and picked out a maple tree.
Oh, really? That's pretty neat.
Chainsawed it down and milled it up, and that was one of the things we were able to do. And so he got a guitar that truthfully had come from his woods.
Right.
And I'm still using the rest of that log, and we're still making instruments out of it.
Really?
Yeah.
So who is your typical customer? Who typically comes looking for well, maybe not a custom, but one that's not made by a mass manufacturer?
Sure. A lot of times I wind up selling to worship leaders at churches.
Okay.
They're just kind of, for whatever reason, that's a group that really, they love, I think, the small aspect. And I've really loved having the chance to sell to them. Truthfully, they're all the ones I've ever worked with have just been a great group of people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So would your instruments, would they be appropriate for a beginner, or is it more of
They're probably more
seasoned player,
intermediate to advanced?
Okay.
So typically, a lot of times guitar players have what's called guitar acquisition syndrome, where once you buy your first one, you'll keep buying them for life. But so oftentimes I try and position myself as the guitar that would be a great second, maybe third instrument.
Okay.
Generally second is sort of what I'm shooting for, where somebody has gotten guitar, they've learned guitar, they've played enough of their friends and whatever else is to have a feel for, like, I kind of know what I'm looking for. I've heard a range of quality, and so I understand enough about sound to expect a certain quality and caliber of sound. And that's really where I try and position myself to fit in there. I'm not trying to be the $20,000 dream guitar.
Right.
I'm positioning myself more as sort of just a great instrument that's a lot more accessible to a broader range of people.
Okay. And so what makes Zamar Instruments special? I know you got, I've seen some pictures, and yours don't look quite like others that I see.
Sure. So there's a couple of different things I think I would say. And, first and foremost, there's the story. There's the part that this is not, this isn't just, the 500th guitar of the day.
It's not an assembly line.
This is the guitar that I'm making right now. And with that, there's a freedom that I have as a builder, because I don't have to push out, numbers. I'm not on that mad rush of we've got to get this quantity out the door. I can make each instrument maximized to itself. And sort of the analogy that I like to give people is, in a big factory, they have it figured out where we sand all of our pieces to this thick, we put them together, 90% of the time it's going to be a good guitar. 5% of the time it's going to be an incredible guitar. 5% of the time it's not going to be so hot.
Right.
And, it's wood. There's always different stiffnesses and different ranges of flexibility or whatever. So they're playing to their best tolerances. But as an individual builder, I can play to an individual instrument's tolerances, and I can say, okay, this piece of wood right here would be best at this thickness. So
wood is not wood.
Wood is not wood.
Really?
There is no two pieces are the same. And
really?
I've pulled out guitar tops that I could tell, were sliced side by side out of the same log, and it's different. And so it's just, it's always, in that sense, it's always fun, because you have a rough working range of, like, okay, I'm going to dial them into about here, and then I'm going to start individualizing them all.
Okay.
And at that point, we're really letting what's this guitar's best sound. What can we do as far as shaping the braces, as far as how thick everything's going to be? How can we control the overall sound of this instrument in its best way? So that's a big part of it. One of the other things I do that's sort of a lot more noticeable from a visual standpoint is I put a second sound hole in all of my instruments, and it's on the side of the guitar, so it's actually pushing toward the player.
Okay.
And that really helps create a much better player experience, because if you're playing in a group or whatever, it gets a little hard to hear yourself. And so that extra hole pushes sound straight toward you, so you can hear yourself better. It also, because all the sound frequencies aren't necessarily bottlenecking at one spot as it's trying to escape the guitar body. Overall, you create just a much cleaner sound on the instrument. And so it's a great addition, I think, because I love just the way it not only makes it better for you, but truthfully does make it better for everyone listening. It opens up the tone of the instrument a lot more.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Like you say, it's noticeable. It's something you can
and it
see.
catches people's eye, and you can find your picks easier when you drop them in.
Yeah, easier to get out.
Yep.
Yeah, I bet. So when you're talking about the different types of wood, when you say not all wood's wood, right? Mm-hmm. Are you saying one type like maple's better than cherry, or are you saying that even in maple it's not all the same?
Even within species, it's not all the same. And there's definitely, definitely switching in between species. There's huge differences. Mm-hmm. But even within the same species, there's always still these little variations. And
it's a natural product, right? It's not grown in a lab.
Right, very much so.
That makes sense. So, I mean, it's easy to see you're a craftsman when you see the product that you produce. It's pretty crazy, but you're also a businessman.
Yeah.
So, you not only do you have these skills to produce something, but you've got to run a business. So, what are some of the challenges of being a small businessman? You went into this thing, I want to make guitars. Right. And then you're like, crap, now I got to run a business too.
Got to file taxes.
You got to file taxes. I got to do all this stuff. What part of running a business, what keeps you up at night?
I think probably one of the challenges of running a small guitar business is figuring out really where you want it to go. Because most of the one-man shops out there that are building guitars are building a very small number of very expensive instruments.
Okay.
And so it's just a different, that's sort of its own market of the guitar world. And a lot of the big manufacturers are building a high number of low to medium price instruments. And I'm kind of in the middle because truthfully, I like making instruments that are going to, for lack of a better term, normal people, right? I don't want to sell $25,000 instruments. I'd much rather sell just great instruments to people that I can be friends with without, I don't need them to pick me up in their private jet or whatever else.
Yeah.
And so, but with that, there's that challenge of, okay, if I want to make this feasible, if I want to be able to, have a sustainable business, or I'm single right now, but if I want to be married and have a family, what are the sort of, where are the numbers needing to line up, and what do I need to, how much do I need to make something happen as far as growing it in a certain dimension, and how much do I have to say, okay, it's a small business, it's going to grow probably slower than I'd like. And how much do you just learn to, run a business and still have something that resembles a normal life is probably one of the great challenges for me, because, because it can become, especially when you work by yourself, it can become that sort of all-consuming thing.
There's always something else to do, right?
Right. And so how do you balance that? You could always work a little more and try a little harder. And there's definitely times and seasons where that needs to happen.
Right.
There are deadlines that you gotta meet. But simultaneously, how do you have a life that's not strictly tied up in what you do for work? Right? How do you there's making a living and having a life, and probably one of the challenges as a business owner is not necessarily separating them, because you're not going to ever fully divorce the two. But how do you walk together with them? How do you balance them out?
Yeah, it's got to be a challenge. How do you market your business? Where do you? Because that's got to be a hard thing too. Because you're not just blasting advertisements out, right? That's not your target. So how are you reaching the people who are potential customers for Zamar Instrument? Yeah.
So currently, the way I do it mostly is in-person events.
Okay.
And especially as a small guitar company, guitar players, they want to play an individual instrument. They, if you're buying something from a mass manufacturer, your friend has one, you like the way it sounds, you look at the model number, you go online, you buy it.
Right.
If you're buying something from a small builder, there's much more of a sense of, no, this is going to be my instrument, and I want to make sure that I like it. And so in-person events are definitely where I sell most of my guitars. So currently that's where I do a lot of worship conferences, because they tend to be a really good size and just a population of guitar players.
Okay.
I found music shows are a little hit or miss, because you get people who play music, but you get a lot of people who don't play and just are there to enjoy the music.
Okay.
So a lot of like Christian worship events and things like that tend to be where there's just a really great concentration of guitar players. Yes, that's a lot of it, which, is probably, in terms of what keeps me up at night, going back there, figuring out where the world's going post-COVID is a big part of that, because, for the last couple of years, in-person events were just a non-entity. And so that was its own challenge. So thankfully, it seems like, on the whole, that's sort of going back to normal, and those events are definitely coming back. And I'm noticing just every year there's more and more of them that are back to being in-person live events.
So how'd you adapt during COVID, where everything was being canceled and shut down?
I survived. So, yes, pretty much I just had to make it a part-time thing.
Really?
Yeah. And just picked up, odd jobs here and there, did some whatever,
Were you ever tempted to start making furniture again, or?
I wasn't horribly tempted to start making furniture, just because I love making furniture, but I love making it for myself.
Okay.
And I've learned I love making guitars, for one thing, just for the customer base. They're always musicians. They always think it's radical that I'm building guitars, and they always are just super excited. And furniture, it's just a harder market. And there's just it's just a different customer base, and nothing wrong with that. But truthfully, I just much prefer building furniture for myself. But no, I truthfully thought about, do I go into construction, because I've done enough of it to be pretty good at it, or do I just shift gears altogether or whatever?
That had to be tough.
It was, it was just a lot. It was, it was tough for everybody, just because there were so many unknowns right there, especially at the beginning. What does this look like? And so, so truthfully, just kind of, survived it, did some different stuff here and there, and was just really waiting to see where it would go. And so, right now, as things are definitely progressing, more and more normally, it's just a much better kind of music scene, if you will, right now.
Good. It's good to hear. So how long have you been in business doing this? So
I've been building guitars for about 7 years now. I've been doing the business for about 4 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. So where do you see yourself in your business in, say, 10 years from now?
It depends on
a perfect world. Where are we going to be?
In a perfect world. If only, right? So I go back and forth, truthfully. I think in some ways I'd love to have a company with 10, 15 employees where we're all making instruments and big enough to be productive, and to feel like there's a little bit of a system in place that isn't hinging on one person.
Right.
But every once in a while, though, I still, as I look at the challenges of hiring and some of that, I'm like, I don't know. I like the one-man operation in its own sense, but I do like the idea of, I would love to have just a group of people, a group of builders all working together, and just, I think that kind of that camaraderie of if you get a group of people trying to build a great product, you're going to wind up with a much greater product, and that the creativity that happens when you get a group of people together, I think would just be an exciting thing to be a part of.
Yeah, you're right. It would be. You ever given any thought to expanding your line to other stringed instruments, or just going to stick with guitars?
For now, I'll stick with guitars. Truthfully, it's just in a shop my size with the capacity that I have to try and branch out too much, I think would be, truthfully, it'd probably be detrimental in its own right, just because it would make it harder in between builds to, readjust your tooling, readjust your machines. And so to stay fairly tight, I think gives me a much more consistent product, which is really important right now. It's really important that as people are buying, that they find a great product every time.
Right.
And that they're consistently happy with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, do one thing and do it well, right?
Yeah.
I get it. That's good. You touched on this a little bit when we talked about, during COVID when things slowed down, but suppose something happened tomorrow and you couldn't make guitars anymore.
Yeah.
What would you be doing?
I have no idea. I love.
Well, let me ask you this differently.
Sure.
What would, maybe you've already got your dream job. What would the dream job be if you weren't doing this?
Yeah, I truthfully would have to say this is pretty close to the dream job. Yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge with this job right now, if I'm honest with myself, is that it doesn't give me as much money as I'd like at times. Yeah. But truthfully, it's just money, and in that sense, I kind of have to go back and say, well, what's truthfully important? And, I get to work out of a shop on my parents' property. I get to, I can listen to podcasts and teachings all day long. I can build things that I love that other people are blessed by. And so, I've considered it like, what would I do? But truthfully, I really don't know. I mean, I love working with my hands. And so I'm sure it would probably be something with my hands, but no, I think right now it's a great season of life in its own right. And I really legitimately love building guitars.
That's awesome. Well, to be your age and be doing what you would consider your dream job already, that's fantastic. Yeah, pretty sweet setup here.
It's really.
It's pretty. We're actually recording in Nate's shop today. Yeah, and that's why you might hear a guinea join us every once in a while squawking outside, but that's fine. But no, you got a sweet setup here. I can see why this would be your dream. I get it. That's pretty cool. So if anyone was interested in picking up one of your instruments or just learn more about you, where could they find you?
So my website is probably one of the best places just for the info in general and contacting me, and that's www.zamar, ZAMAR instruments.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have some social media presence too. I know I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. So Instagram is pretty much, it's my main social media presence.
And is it, I don't even know, I follow you, but is it Nate or is it Zamar?
It's at Zamar Instruments.
Zamar Instruments on Instagram.
Yep.
Yeah. He's got some pretty, I encourage everyone to go check it out. He's got some pretty cool videos of the construction process.
Yeah, thank you.
And you kind of get an appreciation for what goes into making these things and some of the skills and techniques. It's definitely a craft. It's pretty impressive. Any other social media you do?
No, I technically have a Facebook page, but I don't.
Yeah, right.
I don't do anything with it.
Okay, Nate, that's pretty much all I've got for you. Is there anything you were hoping we'd get to that, or anything you want to add or touch on or reinforce? It's your chance.
It was a great conversation. I think one of the things I love whenever I do have a chance to discuss guitars is, everybody always asks about the why, right? Why do you like building guitars? And so we kind of touched on it with that whole, hands-on side and the construction side and where I get to work and all of that. But one of the other things I love so much about building guitars is that a guitar, if you try and break down its essence, right? It's a box in the most basic sense. It's got four sides. Yeah. It's got some decorations around it. Basically, it's a box. And in that sense, it's very similar to building furniture. And so that, the transition wasn't that difficult from a construction standpoint for me. But one of the things that I love so much is when you build furniture, whether that's tables or cabinets or whatever, you build things that people put things in or put things on. And, cabinets hold people's dishes. They hold their memories. They hold their, the knickknacks or their treasures or whatever.
Right.
And one of the interesting things with a guitar is it's a container, but it has to stay empty. And it can't, once you put something in the guitar, you destroy the whole purpose of the guitar. And so I love building guitars because guitars are really containers, but they're containers for letting things out.
Right.
And so, you build furniture and people put things in it. I build guitars and I sell them to people, and now it's actually a container for their ideas.
Okay.
It's a container for, the music that they have that they want to get out and that they want to write, or that they may not even know is really in them right now.
Right.
And so a guitar is such a great thing because it holds ideas. It lets ideas out. And that's one of the things I love just as I'm connecting with customers and selling these guitars and getting to meet people all over the country doing it, is that for each of these people, I do a job and I do it well. Mm-hmm. And that's my responsibility on my end to make sure that when I give them that guitar, it's going to do what it needs to do for them. But right. I love that idea of really, I'm just throwing the rock in the pond and it's going to ripple out. They're going to use it to make music, and that's going to impact other people, and that's going to then go from there. And I get to do what I do, and I love doing it. But I also love that idea of I'm starting something, and I have no idea where it ends.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I gotta say, it definitely came across sitting here across the table from you, and I think it came through in your words when we were talking earlier about the school you were going to, and then mm-hmm. you took the elective guitar making class, and I think it came across how you perked up. I mean, it's obvious that this is your heart's in this. This is your love, and like I say, you're 25 years old and you got your dream job. That's incredible. So I think it's fantastic. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate it.
We can do to help get the word out. This is awesome. That's really all I got, Nate. I appreciate you letting me into your shop, taking time out of your day. I'm sure you got things you could be doing instead of sitting here talking to me. But I'm glad you invited me in, and you got a pretty good setup here, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thanks.
I think you're going to do well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming out. Had a blast talking. I really, really enjoyed it very much. So thanks for having me on the show.
Cool. I'll link to your website, your Instagram page, get all your contact info and everything in the show notes. So anybody looking to get a hold of Nate, it'll be easy to find him. And I encourage you, if nothing else, just go check out his Instagram and some of the videos that he has on there. And you'll start to get an appreciation for what he does. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up and we'll get out of here.
All right. Thanks so much, Brian.
Take care, Nate.
You too.